Hello. Hey, gang. Give me a second. Trying to get all my little duckies in a row here. Oh, man. Welcome back, gang. Hi. How's everyone doing today? I hope you're doing better than I am. I hope you do better than our retirement plans are. Shit. You guys, it's Liberation Day in America, apparently. We are being liberated from our material wealth. We are being liberated from our savings. We are being liberated from our retirement. We are being liberated from our checkbooks, okay? Our bank accounts going to zero. The tariffs are insane. They're insane. 54% tariffs on China, right? I have a list of them somewhere. Hold on, give me a second. I'll read them to you. European Union, 20% tariffs. Vietnam, 46%. Taiwan, where we get our chips from, 32%. Japan, 24%. India, 26%. There are 8 pages of these, okay? 8 motherfucking pages of these tariffs. It's insane. Tariffs are a tax. And I know that's cliche to say, but it's simply true. What do they charge the U.S. in tariffs? Doesn't matter. We are more wealthy for them, and we are more wealthy than them. And one of the reasons we are more wealthy than them is we do not charge as much in tariffs. One of the reasons we have, right, more stuff, and we are, again, on average, much more wealthy, is because we don't tariff them as much as they do us. It's just common sense. Okay. All these tariffs are going to do, they might spark a trade war, which is not going to be good for anyone. But even if they don't, your prices are going to go up. Your cost of living is going to go up. It's just going to happen. Even if you buy American made. And do you know why? Even with American made products. Because your American made products often buy the raw materials which they use to assemble and produce their products from other countries, which are now their raw materials, their cost to produce their product is going to increase. And they're going to pass that cost on to you, the consumer, because of course they will. Vietnam has announced that they're dropping all their tariffs on U.S. products. Cool. But again, like there's 8 pages of these, 20 countries a page about. We'll see, I suppose. We'll see. But we've done tariffs before. Here's the thing. Like, this isn't something we've never tried, that's entirely new, that we haven't had extensive experience with in the past. We've tried tariffs, even from... We have examples back in the 1900s, right? We have examples 10 years ago. We have examples from 6 years ago, right? Of where we tried tariffs. What generally happens in almost all cases are 2 things. Costs of what we tariff skyrocket, and it becomes more expensive. And we lose more jobs than we end up creating. Because a lot of the companies that rely on these imports from other countries, these raw materials, they can't afford to staff anymore. They can't afford to operate anymore. So they either go out of business, they lay a bunch of people off, etc. I don't understand why we think now is going to be different. Yeah, the U.S. ran off tariffs until 1913, and we were dirt poor. We weren't a world power. It was terrible. Yeah, we were much poorer back then. That's true. Counterpoints will be here soon. Let me give him a little texty text. We're not even talking about tariffs today, okay? We're talking about free speech. We're talking about Mahmoud Khalil. We're talking about immigration. We're talking about all that. But I just had to say something about the economy right now because it's ain't looking good, folks. The futures for Standard & Poor are down like 300 points or something. Dow Jones is down 600 points. This dollar is down like by 0.5%, which is kind of a lot. It's pretty bad. Just jump backstage whenever. Send him a little texty text. Now, here's the deal. If he bails on me again, I'm not inviting him back. This is last chance. Okay. Do you play in the market, Whick? No, I do not. So. I watched a lot of people I know, especially older people, lose everything in the 2008 market crash. And I've been skeptical of it ever since. Now, is that overly paranoid? Perhaps. But still. A lot of people who have more traditional jobs, right? Because remember, I was in the military, so my I don't have the 401k shit, okay? But a lot of my family does. They work more traditional jobs and things like that. But Counterpoints is here. Let's bring him in. Doop, doop, doop. Hello, hello.
Hello?
Oh, you are super low. Hold on.
For some reason, I can't hear you. Let me try to fix it.
Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Talking.
Why can't I double click this?
Well, it's super hard to hear you too.
I want to set the status. I want to go into the channel. What's the problem?
You're here.
You are super low. We'll work on it.
Okay.
I'm literally looking at. Can you kick me out and bring me back in? I'm literally staring at your face and I'm double clicking it, and you're staying in a small.
Okay. I reset you. Hopefully that'll fix the problem.
Better.
Yeah? Good.
Let me figure out why I can't hear you.
Okay. Welcome to tech support with Counterpoints
settings.
and Whick TV.
Output. Separate. Try again.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. And then, do you need me to
go
into my settings, boost my volume and voice and video?
Hold your talk for like 10 seconds uninterrupted. I want to see something.
Mic check 1 2 3. Mic check 1 2 3.
Okay, I think you're fine. I think we fixed whatever it is. I can hear you now. You're audible.
Okay.
Audience, how is he? How's his volume? Can you hear us both? Is everything working? I hope so.
And then I actually am live on my end as well, okay. So let me just pull us onto screen for my audience.
Take your time, right? Hey, how about those Trump tariffs, man? You see the
MAGA is pissing me off so bad I can't even see straight. It's actually infuriating.
What are they doing over there?
Being dipsticks. Okay, I'm trying to moderate my language a little bit.
We're not on Twitch. Okay, I wasn't sure if you were still banned, and two, you were very naughty with Rob Noor. So
I was very naughty, but I'm gonna be less naughty going forward. So do you want me to do an? May I introduce myself to your audience?
Of course, them a little bit. Of course, just once your tech gets done and we're all set and you're ready to go, just let me know. We can kick this thing off.
Okay, I am ready when you're ready.
Ready when you are. Okay, so welcome, one and all, to yet another episode of Whick TV. Counterpoints has graciously agreed to talk to me about some of the statements he's been making about Mahmoud Khalil, as well as free speech and immigration in general, and we're going to talk about that today. But he wants to introduce himself, so I'm going to give the mic to him. Tell people who you are, what you do, and why should we listen to you? Go ahead.
Excellent. So my name is Connor. I'm a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd. I'm a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran. I run a semi-successful, moderately successful YouTube channel called Counterpoints 40K. I did break 100,000 subs recently, and I do post a breakdown of the Warhammer universe. I also, the main reason why I wanted to introduce myself was because I have become a part of something called Valor Media Network. It's an offshoot of Midas, and it's basically a attempt to build a white pill, pro-masculine, anti-MAGA coalition of creators that hang out together and talk about politics, sports, gaming, surfing, mindfulness, a whole bunch of different stuff. And it's just supposed to be an alternative to the red pill, basically, but also with let's face it, a dash of politics, right? So Valor Media Network, if you type that into YouTube, you can find me there. I will no longer be using the F slur or the N word or anything like that because I have to keep my streams PG-13. So I'm going to try to keep our conversation PG-13 as well.
Certainly, I will tone down my language as well. No more F.
It's okay.
As
I'm
little
live on
F-bombs as
Counterfire
possible
right now, so you can say crazy stuff if you want.
Fair enough. But no, that's really cool. Check it out, gang. I have actually not seen this network or heard about this network before, so I can't recommend it too highly.
Brand
but
spanking new.
I can recommend Counterpoints. He's a good faith guy. He's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to him about this, is because I know he's going to be at least honest with me, and we can have an actual conversation, which I think is good. So let's I guess just get right into it. Do you think Mahmoud Khalil should be deported?
Yes.
Why? Give me your argument here. Why do you think Mahmoud Khalil should have his green card revoked and be deported from this country? Go ahead.
Because Mahmoud Khalil, obviously a court should review this, but it is at minimum alleged that Mahmoud Khalil was a part of an organization called CUAD, which is a coalition of pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli activists who took over Columbia University. This organization, he has in previous interviews claimed to be a member and someone who helped lead it. He also in previous interviews, well, not in previous interviews, but he's been reported to be a negotiator on their behalf to the point that once this organization took over several buildings in a college to protest the Gazan genocide, if you want to phrase it that way, he was negotiating with the administration, the college administration, in order to figure out like what the next steps were. So I think that denying that he was a part of this student organization is inaccurate at best. And then this student organization released an article called Commemorating the Al-Aqsa Flood, Honoring Our Martyrs, Tactical Lessons from Brazilian Students. And it's effectively a newsletter that was released on the anniversary of the October 7th massacre. And it celebrates the Palestinian terrorist perspective.
Sure. I mean, all that, right? The especially the last bit, right, where someone is celebrating a massacre done by terrorists. That's terrible, reprehensible. Why should he be subject to deportation for exercising his First Amendment rights?
Because as a part of it, he was either, it doesn't matter if he's a student visa or a permanent visa. I don't think it matters for my argumentation.
Okay.
There is a statute called 8 USC 1182, inadmissible aliens. Under that, there is a terrorism provision that says if you do, as a matter of fact, let me just read it. Hold on 1 second. 8 USC 1227, deportable aliens. Mm-hmm. I'll get to the terrorism section. And it says terrorist activities. Any alien who is described in subparagraphs B or F of section 1182A3 of this title is deportable. If you click on that and then you go to the terrorism subsection, then the main one that I think is relevant is endorses or espouses terrorist activity or persuades others to endorse or espouse terrorist activity or support a terrorist organization. I would argue, and then it basically says that if you do this as an admitted alien to the United States, then you're subject to deportation. I would argue that being a part of an organization that celebrated October 7th as a glorious event has supported a terrorist organization or espoused endorsement of terrorist activity.
Did he author that pamphlet, newsletter, whatever it was? Was he on?
No idea, and I don't think I care.
You don't care. So simply him being associated with the group in that group, members of that group, some portion of them, did something that you find reprehensible or put out speech that you found reprehensible, which, to be clear, Mahmoud Khalil, however you say his fucking name, we'll call him Khalil. Khalil denies this. Khalil says he's never done this. He's never sponsored terrorism. He's not pro-Hamas. And he says that his work with the organization was simply to oppose Israel, which, as I understand, isn't illegal, right? That isn't something that you must support Israel. Isn't in one of those codes that you just read there.
Sure.
So given that this is also, again, like I don't think he should be deported because someone in his group did a bad thing. Can you show me where he specifically, him, not his group, not his organization, made any pro-Hamas comments?
So I can't find you a clip of Mahmoud Khalil specifically endorsing Hamas or endorsing terrorist organizations. The closest that I can get is probably a 10-second clip where he says that effectively the quote is, Palestinians engaged in armed resistance and they're called terrorists. So I would say that he could be just being descriptive, right? Like I'm not going to say like he's full throated saying like, oh yeah, I endorse chopping people's heads off with garden implements. He didn't say that. What he could just be being descriptive where he says when Palestinians engage in any kind of armed resistance against Israel, they're accused of terrorism. Now I would view that as sweeping for a terrorist organization through a conflation of concepts and words, which is close enough for me. So you might not agree that hits your threshold, but I kind of want to test your logic in a second.
Okay, so you think that him simply saying, I don't think this group should be labeled terrorists is enough to hit your threshold?
Yeah, it's enough. For
Disagreeing
me,
with the current administration's view on what is and is not a terrorist is enough that you think they should be deported?
Sure. Can I test your logic?
Go ahead.
Okay. So let's say that it is 9/11/2002. Okay. And there is a student organization run by Mehmet Piker. Okay. Mehmet Piker is a Turkish-born millionaire who wanted to go to Columbia University, and he has radical perspectives on geopolitical affairs. And there's an organization that actually says, America deserved 9/11, dude. I don't care what you said. Okay. And one of their students say that or puts that into a newsletter, right? Well, we find out that Mehmet Piker, who, by the way, for the sake of the memes, is Hassan Piker's dad in reality. Let's say that Mehmet Piker negotiated on behalf of this student organization that actually does support the terrorist attacks of 9/11/2001. And he negotiated with the student alumni, or excuse me, between the students and the alumni in order for them to end an occupation sit-in on behalf of Al-Qaeda. I would say that this is an almost one-to-one. And I would say that I would 100% after a judicial review be perfectly comfortable with that person having their student visa revoked.
Sure, let's just for the sake of conversation, you don't have to throat clear about the after judicial review. We're gonna just assume for the sake of conversation that
I still believe in due process.
Yeah,
I appreciate
all
that clarity.
That's gonna be given. I'm not here to hold your feet to the fire. You're not one of the people I've seen promoting the it's okay not to give them a trial. We'll just deport them on our word. So we're good on that.
By the way, I'm not trying to reconcile too quickly. However, there was that Turkish student who also wrote a paper critical of Israel and was deported. I think that's incorrect. She didn't endorse a terrorist organization. Her student organization didn't endorse Hamas. They simply said that like Israel's bad and they're doing screwed up stuff.
So the specific thing that for Mahmoud Khalil, and I'll answer your hypothetical, but I'm just trying to pin this down because I did not know you opposed that deportation. And now I'm curious the difference. Like, so the difference for you specifically is that Mahmoud Khalil was part of the Columbia protest, and his involvement, whatever that may be, to whatever degree you think he was involved, was enough to hit your threshold. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that like rhetorically sweeping for a terrorist organization meets my threshold.
Okay. It does not mine. Like, and again, I want to be clear that Mahmoud Khalil denies being pro-Hamas. But I would say, and my argument today is even if he was handing out pamphlets on America is evil and Hamas is good, right? Even if he's handing out those pamphlets to students, that he is still protected as an immigrant, as an alien, under the First Amendment. And if you would, in your hypothetical of Mehmet Piker, right, was a citizen and doing all that, right, he should not be deported.
No, he would be a student visa or a permanent green card holder.
But if he was, you would agree with me that if he was a citizen, you would not deport him because he's protected by the First Amendment.
Literally, citizens are off the table because that is their privilege as citizens of the United States.
But immigrants also get this privilege. Immigrants who dwell in legal immigrants, to be clear, who exist under our jurisdiction in America are also protected by the First Amendment. And we have some case law to back this up, going as far back as 1945 with Bridges and fucking Wixon, I don't know how to pronounce these names, which again, it says fairly clearly that immigrants are protected by the First Amendment. In this case, specifically, the Bridges case, it was an Australian man who was accused of being anti-American, and he was a member of the Communist Party. And his simple membership was, they tried to use that against him to deport him. The Supreme Court said, you can't do that. And I agree with that.
So I'm seeing if communism is a part of 8 USC 1227. And trust me, I will have more to say about this. So in 8 USC 1227, it does say that terrorism is a bridge too far and that you can deport people. I would be happy to take this to the Supreme Court. And I also think that your interpretation, because I think your interpretation stands testing even with the Supreme Court. I think it could be a 50-50 toss-up between them applying 8 USC 1227 or them breaking your way and saying, no, they got full First Amendment rights. That's entirely possible. However, I think my frustration on Twitter is that liberals and progressives do not take a textualist interpretation of any other amendment. And I think the Second Amendment is the clearest example of that. And we can either continue with what we're talking about or we can test it.
But you do know that immigrants also are protected for Second Amendment rights too. You can buy a gun as an immigrant in this country and the government can't take it away from you. That's also protected.
I almost guarantee you that's not a given.
Can you find me a state where that's not true?
Can aliens buy guns in the United States?
They might have to have a background check like everyone else, right?
An alien legally in the United States is not prohibited from purchasing a firearm unless the alien is admitted into the U.S. as a non-immigrant visa and does not meet one of the exceptions of 18 USC 922. So there's absolutely limitations. And then on top of that, it has to be an immigrant visa, not a non-immigrant visa. So it can't be a
non-immigrant visa.
What's that?
What is it? What is a non-immigrant visa? I'm actually not.
My suspicion, just using words, bear in mind I'm not Pisco, I'm not a lawyer. My suspicion is that a student visa would be considered temporary, whereas a permanent resident would be an immigrant visa. That would be my suspicion based off of the words.
I'm just really curious because I don't actually know. Foreign nationals. Okay, immigrant visas are issued to foreign nationals who intend to live permanently. Non-immigrant visas are foreign nationals who wishing to enter on a temporary basis for tourism, medical treatment, business, temporary work, study, or other reasons. So you're probably correct that a student visa who isn't intending to stay here would probably, and again, not a lawyer, be a temporary or non-immigrant visa. Interesting. Good to know. But at the end of the day, right, I think any laws or statutes that violate either of these amendments, whether it be first or second, I would hope that they would be struck down in this report. I don't know if they will, but I think that they should. And I think that limiting protections for the First Amendment to student visas, to legal permanent residence, to any kind of immigrant that you can think of, what that does, when it carves out too big of an exception for me. So I'll give you an example, right? The speech is what the First Amendment protects. It's the act of saying, I think America is evil and this terrorist organization is good. That speech, that saying of it, is what is and needs to be protected. Because as soon as you start carving out exceptions, well, people can say that except for these kinds of people. It weakens a shield that protects my speech, it protects your speech, it protects everyone's speech. And I think that by denying a specific group of people, in this case immigrants, First Amendment protections, what we're going to do is going to weaken that protection for you and for me and for other citizens. And I would point to how the current administration is acting in regards to all this deportation thing as evidence that this will likely be the case.
Yeah, you're not going to find me as much as I make an exception for terrorist sympathizing in immigrant circles as something that I would accept that as a deportable offense. I think that no, you're not going to find me defending the Trump administration in almost any other capacity. I think that them deporting random random asylum applicants who oftentimes have court dates that are pending, and they snatch them up for whatever BS reason, like they had a tattoo, but the tattoo is not gang affiliated, but they use the tattoo as an excuse to send them to CCOT, which is effectively El Salvador's Guantanamo Bay. And then when the state says, hey, you screwed up by sending this person to El Salvador and Guantanamo Bay, can you get them back? And then the executive administration just says, no, they don't even try. Well, I think that
that's
this is
evil, right? But
they're pushing it. Yes. They're pushing it as hard as I can. So you'll never find me defending any of those things. However, I think there needs to be reasonable limits. And if you'll indulge me, please. So let's talk about the Second Amendment real quick. So you're saying, and I think libertarians in the past, of which I've been sympathetic to in the past, they would say that the Second Amendment is pretty gosh darn clear as far as a word basis goes, which is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And it's been found, obviously through DC versus Heller, which is contentious in and of itself, but it's been found that the people refers to the citizens of the United States of America. It doesn't refer to a state's militia. It doesn't refer to a federal militia. It doesn't refer to the militias necessary to keep a free state. It refers to the people. So what I would say is that keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, but we not only tolerate infringements on the right to bear arms, we celebrate some of them.
I can understand the frustration, right, that you feel, right, with a lot of people who kind of speak out of both sides of their mouths here, right? One amendment is good, the other amendment is somehow bad, and things like that. And I think that there could be reasonable obstacles to both. So, for example, the First Amendment does carve out some exceptions to speech. The Brandenburg test is a very good example, right, where you can't actually incite to violence, but it's very stringent standards. There are very, very stringent exceptions. And I think that these exceptions, right, are very narrowly tailored, narrowly focused, so that you really have to try to meet them in a lot of cases. The Second Amendment specifically, when we try, or when legislators or mayors or what have you try to make laws to infringe upon the Second Amendment to certain groups like felons, right? Or like, immigrants, for example. I would argue that this makes it easier for future administrations and more legislators to push those boundaries even further. What I'm arguing for here, in both the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, right, is to nip that in the bud, to not let the thin end of the wedge get in here. And my worry with Mahmoud specifically is this is that thin end of the wedge, because the current administration has said, Trump has said, anyone who protested, we're going to kick you out if you're on a visa. They've said that. Marco Rubio, he said, we don't care. I've deemed you a national security threat, and on my word alone, well, that's enough to kind of deport you, which again, I think is ultimately an unconstitutional law. In 1996, the only time it's been challenged, right, that I could find was in 1996, where one of the, I forget the specifics of the case, but the national security guy at the time The SecDef at the time tried to deport someone on similar grounds, and that was struck down by a circuit judge. It wasn't appealed or anything. It didn't go to the Supreme Court, but a third circuit judge called it unconstitutional and struck it down. That third circuit judge was Trump's sister. That's a fun little trivia fact for you.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to push you on this though,
please.
So we apply a reasonableness standard to almost everything else. And what I mean by that is with the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, well, we say, okay, well, the right to keep and bear arms is clearly written into the United States Constitution. However, we are going to limit who can have access to a machine gun, because while the whole point of the Second Amendment is to be able to resist a tyrannical government and to be able to keep yourself safe, we think that we have to balance the public interest versus the weapons that a person can do. Therefore, we're putting a limit on the kind of weapons that you can have. Libertarians would argue that this is the slippery slope that is chipping away at the constitutional fabric of what makes America America. And I agree with them to an extent, at least in like principle, but I'm also a pragmatist. And I think that reasonableness can be applied. So for instance, I would not take a pistol and then walk into a hospital and a nursery where all the babies were just born, and then just kind of like wave my gun around and be like, ha ha ha, shall not be infringed. I'm just bearing my pistol, lol. Like, no, I would be perfectly okay if a private institution trespassed me. I would also be okay, let's say it's a public hospital, I would be okay with a public institution also saying, no, we have an ordinance against you bearing your arms inside this establishment.
Do you think that's comparable though to an immigrant coming into this country, an immigrant coming into this country?
Limit on an existing right
to college? I understand, but again, there are legal limits on existing rights, even for the citizens of the United States in the First Amendment. Again, I outlined one, the Brandenburg test. There's a couple others, right? We have slander laws, we have libel laws, for example, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, there are, I think you would agree, unreasonable limits that we place on these laws. There are laws and gun laws that you might find reprehensible or to kind of like go across your red line.
But is it reasonable? This is actually
that's the question. Is this reasonable? And I say it's not. I don't think it's reasonable to expect that a immigrant in this country, it is not reasonable to tell them you better watch what you say, because if you say something that disagrees with our current administration, we're just going to fucking kick you out.
No, so
that's what's happening.
This is where I find it unreasonable. Okay, so if you're willing to endorse the and this is funny, I normally would like big dog somebody on age, but I think we're very similar in age. So you probably were like a teenager.
I'm
during
41
9/11,
years
right?
old, so I don't know how old you are.
You're 41?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm late 30s, so we're
big
right
dog
there. So
someone on age right now.
I can't big dog you. I can't be like, oh, you're just a teenager. You don't know what it was like, man.
I do.
Like,
I was in college when the towers got hit, right?
Yeah, so I don't think that it is reasonable for a state to tolerate. So aliens, right? This is my conception of government as a whole. Okay, is that we are, relatively speaking, hairless gorillas who operated in tribes, who found out that we could appoint people who would make decisions about how we rule ourselves. That's effectively government, in my opinion, right? And these tribes have competed all over the world with different systems in order to see what would work. And in my opinion, republicanism is the best system, okay? However, there are still plenty of other systems out in the world. Some of them are theocratic, some of them are authoritarian, some of them are fascist, some of them are communist, right? And so if there's someone who is an enemy to the Republican system to the point that they may pose an existential threat, a physical threat to the citizens here, then our duty is to the citizens here, not to the person who comes from a rival tribe.
But here's my counter to that. Any censorious action against these immigrants who are coming in and saying these things represent a far greater danger to the citizens of our country than allowing him to speak at a protest on a campus in college. That is the true threat. Do you think that America is so weak that it can't allow some student knucklehead to say, "Oh, America bad, Hamas good"?
Yeah, I think it's dangerous. I think this is literally the paradox of
just
tolerance.
disagree. I disagree. I think that, like, again, the danger comes from the censoriousness. The danger comes from trusting the government and empowering the government to stifle certain groups of people's speech. I think that it is it's just unreasonable.
We disagree, but I do want to push you a little bit more
Push
on
hard, go.
on the
Go ahead.
limitations of amendments. So as an example, you brought up some exceptions. We basically agree that it all comes down to reasonableness as far as like limitations to amendments,
Yes.
right? But at the same time,
Well, not
we
all.
have
There's other
already
factors at play, but this is what we're on now. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. So what I would say is that as an example for the Fourth Amendment, we've made exceptions, which is like a person shall be secure in their persons and property and all that kind of crap, unless the government has some like a warrant or something like that, right? We could look it up real quick if you want the specific language. But then we've already come up with exceptions to the rule. So for instance, like a motor conveyance, we've come up with the fact that a motor conveyance, while private property, public travels on public roads, and you can observe what's inside a motor conveyance. And so it bridges the private public gap. And therefore, if a law enforcement officer observes obviously criminal activity within a conveyance, then that can be justifications for search without a warrant. Now, you can say that this is the slippery slope that leads down the Fourth Amendment no longer being relevant, but I don't think that's true at all.
I don't either. But again, to equate that to some guy, look, if you said that because of his speech, we want to look into it and see if he has any terrorist ties, fair. I think opening an investigation,
then what's your
that's
line?
fair.
My
line on speech is the same as the First Amendment.
Said in order to get kicked out.
Well, I think that you have to break anything that would get a citizen in trouble legally with speech should apply to an immigrant. There should be no difference in speech laws to the two. So I
fundamentally disagree.
Fair enough, but let me explain my reasoning here. If a citizen said something so egregious, right? Or let me put it this way. If there is speech that is so egregious that speaking it poses a fundamental threat to our state, then that should be illegal both for the citizen and for the immigrant, because again, it poses a threat to the fundamental nature of our state. However, I think Mahmoud Khalil in this case and other Colombian student protesters, even the ones who did shout the from the river to the sea and shout the like globalize the intifada and all that bullshit, right? I think that they should be subject to the same First Amendment protections, and their speech should be subject to the same First Amendment protections as citizens. Because I think, again, right, to look at this as a threat to the states, I just find unreasonable. It's an unreasonable standard.
Okay, so what I would say is that sorry, somebody asked me a somebody asked me a question. They're like, this is so anti 1A. How could Connor take this position? And I think they just showed up late. 8 USC 1227 is a statute. I think it's federal that talks about deportable aliens. And it lists a whole bunch of criteria for which a alien could be potentially deported. Okay. And it basically says that if you endorse a terrorist organizations, that's grounds for deportation. And so what I would say is that my duty, I talked about how we have different ideas about how these tribes of human beings should run. And realistically, all of these tribes are competing for the souls of 7 billion people on the planet. I don't look at these people as like liberals in theocrat clothing. I do look at them as what they are, which is oftentimes authoritarian theocrat terrorists, and they don't see a distinction. Literally, Noah Samson doesn't see a distinction. Literally, Hassan Piker doesn't see a distinction. If a service member walks down the street, gets shot by a insurgent, and then returns fire and kills the insurgent, but also kills civilians, these people are making it rhetorically equivalent to having a suicide bomber walk into a market filled with civilians and then kill dozens of people. And in their minds, these things are morally equivalent, when in my tribe, they fundamentally aren't. And so if I see someone from, let's face it, a hostile tribe Jihadism is a hostile tribe, and they come here as a guest, and then they start advocating for jihadism. They start advocating for terrorism. No, you can fuck off with that shit. You can go back to your backwards ass, fucked up ass, violent ass society. And that's not my fucking problem. If you want to come here, when you're in Rome, you do as the Romans do, which means that you don't advocate for the wholesale slaughter of civilians.
There is nothing more American than hating America. Okay?
Then
that is
fuck
an
that,
American
Rick.
pastime that is
sorry,
enshrined in the Constitution.
Like early thousands patriot fucking dad rock patriotism. Fuck that.
It makes us stronger. It makes us.
I don't agree.
Well, I know you don't agree, right? But that's why we're having this conversation, right? Like when we look at people like Hassan Piker, when we look at people like Noah Samson, these fuckheads, and again, I would disagree with Mahmoud Khalil. I think what he said was kind of fucking stupid. A lot of what he said, right? But none of what he said that I've heard was even close to pro-Hamas, right? None of what he said that I heard, right, that I've heard him say was inciting violence in any way. Again, the strongest case that you can make, which I don't think is strong, is that he was associated with people who may have done that. And again, you're a registered Republican, correct? Are you a registered Republican?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would be against the government coming and rounding you up because of what the January 6th protesters did. Even though you're with the same group, right? Doesn't mean...
I'm a citizen.
So were they.
Not only am I a citizen, I don't endorse January 6th. They literally don't have the capacity to deport me because there's no statute that's based off of reasonableness that says that you can excommunicate a citizen for their speech. It doesn't exist.
Okay, what I'm pointing out here is that association isn't enough. If you can show me where Mahmoud Khalil, not the COUD or whatever, where Mahmoud Khalil was, I love Hamas, Hamas is good, or something equivalent to that, then again, I still think it's protected speech, but we can have that conversation. But he hasn't done that.
Let's run it as a hypothetical then. Because you're coming my way in a way, but then I think that you would back off if that was the case. So let's say Mahmoud Khalil is I looked it up. He's a permanent resident, but he's still an immigrant, right? So he's an immigrant to the country, and he goes on national television. It's undeniable, and he says, "I think that October 7th was a justified attack by the Palestinian resistance against Israel. I don't care that they butchered civilians. Fuck them. And realistically, every Israeli is a settler, and they should be butchered by Palestinians from the river to the sea. End of story." Should that person be deported or not?
No, that is protected speech.
Okay, then we're kind of there, bud. Like we can run it back and forth, but that's where we just disagree. My thing is not going to be against the Constitution, so to speak, where I want to contravene the entire concept of having a body of laws. My thing is going to be that I'm going to point out to you, which we've already admitted in this conversation, that there are reasonableness limits to the Constitution of the United States. And I think inviting in your enemies and then your enemies actively endorsing the slaughtering of civilians is sufficient grounds to ask your enemies politely to fuck off and leave. I think that is a very reasonable thing to do.
The enemies of the state quickly can be include groups that we do not want it to be. Why stop at immigrants? Why not go for naturalized citizens? People who weren't born here but became citizens. Why not extend it to that if they are saying the same thing? If they are saying the same thing.
If I look up the law for denaturalization, there's standards there as well. Like there are standards for denaturalization, and I'm pretty sure it funnily enough, it probably goes along with terrorism. Hold on. I can literally Google it. Sure. You ask me a question, I can Google it. You can talk if you want.
Yeah, but here's the deal. While you're Googling that, like citizens, right, can be just as big of a threat, if not more, right, than immigrants, and are in some cases. If you remember back in the Afghanistan war, early on, we had someone born and raised, a citizen in the United States. He went and he joined up with the Afghan army. We had the guy that threw the grenade in the tent with his officers and did a little friendly fire there. Again, American citizen, all right. So again, if your argument is our security,
you were talking about the gentleman who got caught fighting for the Taliban.
yes, I'm sorry. What, did I say that wrong? I thought I said the
no. I'm sorry. I was half reading while I was listening to you, and I do remember that story.
He was an American citizen, right? So again, like this idea that if these people are enemies, and therefore because they are enemies, we have to tell them to say goodbye. Again, what limiting principle would stop an administration from saying, well, you know what? These citizens who are espousing the same things that the immigrants are espousing are also enemies for the same reason.
Okay. So I'm going to say this because I just researched it while we're there. Denaturalization is actually something that can happen. And one of the things that can get your citizenship revoked is membership in subversive organizations. Now, I'm going to read the whole thing because I'm not such an uncharitable douche that I wouldn't give you ammunition as well. But historically, associating with groups deemed hostile to the United States, such as terrorist or extremist organizations, I wish I could just stop there and be a dick and be like, haha, Whick, you're wrong, lol. But the sentence continues. Within 5 years of naturalization. So there's a legal standard that if you are a naturalized citizen, but you are found to have associated with, which I'm sure is a specific legal definition, terrorist organizations, you can be denaturalized. Now, I'm sure that if we went to court, Mahmoud Khalil's conduct would not be sufficient for denaturalization if he was a citizen, right? Now, I do want to point out, though, that voluntary loss of citizenship is also a process where if you're saying, if you go on TV and you say, Al-Qaeda is amazing, I love jihadist terrorism, I want to live in a theocracy, the United States is satanic, I hereby voluntarily revoke or give up my citizenship, the United States can consider that binding and declare you no longer a citizen and then treat you as a foreigner. So there are these processes, and you can say that it's a slippery slope all you want, but these processes exist for people to be identified as enemies of the United States and treated as such.
Certainly, if they say that I no longer want to be a citizen, they are exercising their First Amendment rights, and we should honor them, right? But in this case...
Hold on, Whick. I want to point this out just because it's a logical follow-through. If somebody travels to Afghanistan and they say, I am no longer a citizen of the United States, the president of the United States can say, I recognize you as no longer a citizen, and then they can drone strike their ass legally.
Okay. I have no problem with killing terrorists.
Okay.
I have no problem with killing terrorists. That's not me. I'm not some kind of soft-hearted hippie guy, right? I think that people who are fighting against this country and taking up arms against this country should be destroyed. But my problem is, I don't think that speaking out against this country is enough to put you in that group. To say, I hate America, I love Hamas, is not enough to make you someone that the government should be able to strip their rights away from. And I think that in this case, again, specifically with Mahmoud Khalil, he did not do that.
I'm going to use this. I still think working with these people is sufficient for me. But anyways, I'm just going to give you a metaphor, even though I know we're going to disagree. If I come to your house, you say, Connor, you are a welcome guest in my house. You can stay for 2 years while we work on this media project together. The one thing that I ask you to do, though, is that you take off your shoes when you come into my house. And then I come into your house and then I literally just track mud through it. And you say, hey, man, not cool. Please stop wearing your shoes in my house. And then I do it again. And then I do it again. And then I do it again. If you tell me, hey, Connor, it was cool working with you, but realistically, you keep disobeying a rule that I explicitly asked you when you came to my house as a guest. Therefore, I'm going to kindly ask you to go fuck yourself. I think that you would be in the right. Sure. And I think that metaphorically, this applies to this situation. It's pretty simple to not endorse terrorist organizations. It's actually like very simple.
It's the problem here is that what is and is not a terrorist organization changes based on the whims of the administration. So, for example, the Houthis. Let's talk about the Houthis. They are now a terrorist organization, but 3-4 years ago, they were not a terrorist organization. But 3 and 4 years before that, they were. Because again, the current administration's foreign policy stances change based on our elections. And it is fraught and I think unreasonable to expect an immigrant. Well, let me ask you this. If Hamas had not been deemed a terrorist organization, had not been decided to be a terrorist organization, or if for whatever reason Trump decided, I like Hamas now, and lifted the terrorism status from Hamas, would you think that it is now okay for Mahmoud Khalil to spout the things he said?
No, obviously, but we're talking about like a moral and legal, right?
Okay,
so I would still think
again,
that
my
it would
argument
be
legally is the First Amendment supersedes all of that, and so we're in the moral.
Okay.
quagmire.
So morally, no. Like hold on. So let me try to differentiate. If you endorse an organization that slaughters civilians as an active part of the way that it conducts policy, then I think you're a fundamentally bad person, and I don't want you anywhere near around me. I don't care if you're American. I don't care if you're Arab. I don't care if you're Muslim. I don't care if you're whatever. Okay, that's a moral judgment. Legalistically, if we're talking about we are going to be deporting people for endorsing terrorist organizations, I think it would be messed up of the Secretary of State to say one day that this organization that is not deemed a terrorist organization actually secretly is, so we're going to go ahead and deport you. I think that would go back to the due process part of the conversation, where I wouldn't view that as a good faith action in due process.
This is the thing, right? I think that that's what they're doing to Khalil right now. That I think that they are stretching his association to the COUD, and they're saying because he was associated with it, because he negotiated for it, whatever that means, right? That somehow he is complicit in all of their actions. And as far as I know, he hasn't been arrested for violence. He hasn't been arrested for the sit-in or whatever they did. He hasn't been arrested for any kind of harassment or any of that. Am I wrong?
Yeah, we're just not going to agree. So it's not sufficient for your bar. It's sufficient for my bar. I think there is a distinction between immigrants. I think there is a distinction between citizens and immigrants. I think that there's a legal reason and a legal distinction between citizens and immigrants. So you can appeal to the First Amendment, but then I would just bring to you the reasonableness standard again.
I guess the courts will decide. I'll make a prediction, and we've kind of like circled the drain here, and I don't want to keep you all night, right? I know you streamed all day.
No, it's okay.
Right.
Although I do, I'm sorry if I seemed like I abruptly ended. I have no problems going back and forth, but I do have an out at 7 just because I have dinner.
I understand. Again, like I said,
we do have some time.
No, it's fine. We got like 10 minutes, and they'll be fine. But at the end of the day, I think legally, I would recommend that you read the amicus brief filed by Penn, by Fire, by the not the ADL, the ACLU, and a couple other free speech organizations, and they go through it really well, and they reference a lot of case law and things like that. I think the legal case is strongly on the side of Mahmoud Khalil in this case. I think, again, regardless of whether you think his speech was acceptable or not, the way that and I think we agree on this, so we can end on agreement here. The way that the Trump administration has been going about this has been fraught, for lack of a better term. Because again,
yeah, it's deplorable.
The only reason he's having a trial at all is because his lawyer had to file a writ of habeas corpus, which forced the thing. They were just going to take him and throw him into the El Salvador prison, right? They were going to deport him.
I think they would deport him someplace else, but sure.
I'm not sure. I don't even know at this point, right?
I don't think they would send him to CCOT. As far as I know, CCOT is not related to. So, for instance, there was also that Turkish student who was also Gassim is saying I'm way off, so I'll just take his word for it. She's pending review for deportation. She's not deported yet. She's not going to go to CCOT when she gets deported. She's going to go to Turkey. You know what I'm saying? She's a Turkish citizen. She hasn't committed a crime. She was just, maybe talking a little bit of shit about Israel and talking a little bit of shit about the United States.
This
So
is
she's not
something
going.
I've asked. This is something. Do you view deportation as a punishment?
Yeah, mildly, but at the same time, like if I'm a Turkish, I talked about those tribes, right?
Mm.
So there's different scales of punishment. So if I'm a citizen of Turkey and I get deported to Turkey, but I planned on being in Turkey anyways in 2 years, yeah, it's a little bit of a punishment, but it's not that big of a deal. I planned on living there in 2 years anyways. Whereas if it's I'm from El Salvador and I'm a gay immigrant and I'm a hairdresser and I have an autism awareness tattoo and they're deporting me to CCOT, which is effectively the Guantanamo Bay of Central America filled with MS-13 gang members, then hell yeah, I would view that as an infinitely more threatening punishment than being deported to the country of my home birth.
Certainly. I think that we agree that it is a punishment. I don't know if we agree on the severity of the mild inconvenience of.
Wait, so how much do you fucking hate Turkey? Like is being in Turkey
Edragan is not a good guy, okay? Turkey's, we might have
Come
to look
on,
at
man.
NATO,
Being
right?
Turkish and living in Turkey is not a punishment.
But
if you
have moved and you are taking classes on a college in America, you've gotten the visa, you've done it legally, you're here legally, and you plan to be here for the next 2 years, and suddenly the government, because of you wrote a fucking op-ed, comes in, takes you, and throws you back to your home country, years before you expected and prepared to go there, with no warning, right? That's a pretty big punishment to me.
Sure, but we have to enter in a level of reasonableness. Let's say that I go to Lebanon, all right, and I write how the Sabra and Shatila massacre done by the Phalanges Christian militia was actually based, and Muslims deserve to get slaughtered. And it turns out that we have all this persecution of Christian minorities in Muslim countries. Therefore, what the Christian Phalanges did in 1982 by butchering 3,000 of their neighbors was actually awesome. If the government of Lebanon, while I'm a student in Lebanon, says, hey, bro, did you endorse the slaughter of 3,000 people? And I'm like, yeah, free speech, bro. And they say, you're going to need to fuck off. I'm going to find that very reasonable.
Well, first of all, they've probably been thrown into jail, might even be killed in Lebanon.
Sure.
But we hold ourselves to a higher standard than these third world countries, right? We hold ourselves to a higher standard to these backwards, theocratic, crazy, governments, because I think it makes our freedom has a cost. It has a price. One of those prices that comes with freedom is risk. We accept a level of risk for our freedoms. We could make it so that the Americans were perfectly safe if we locked up every man, woman, and child, and we viewed all their social media, and we limited all their screen time, and we limited all their food intake. Sodas, you can't drink sodas anymore, right? Unhealthy food, you can't eat healthy food. You're mandated to exercise for an hour a day. We'd be healthier. We'd be less in danger. We'd be safer overall. But it would be a fundamental stripping of our freedoms, and we don't accept that, and we should not accept that. I think that people should be free to say stupid shit, do stupid shit, and even sometimes dangerous shit. And I view our right, and it's not just a right that I think American citizens should have, but I would like to bring the First Amendment to everyone, right? If I could.
Yeah, but I want to bring the First Amendment by forcing them. Well, not forcing them. They will learn of our peaceful ways through force. The way that I want the world to develop is I want the Republic to be such an undeniably phenomenal place to live and operate and work as a business that all other cultures want to emulate us. And so as a result, they become republics over time. That's what I would want. But what I don't want, which I think is unreasonable, is to invite my enemies to my table, ask them to have a certain code of conduct while they're at my table, have them violate that code of conduct, and then just say, well, if you were a citizen, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So, nah, I'm good. If you're a jihadist supporting piece of shit, you can fuck off back to your own shitty country. Not my problem.
Okay, we just fundamentally disagree. Counterpoints, thank you for coming on. Thank you for
I appreciate you having me. So even though I said a bunch of F-bombs, can I shout out Valor Media Network one more time?
Yeah, have your closing statement, tell people who you are, where they can find you, etc. And I have a link to his channel in my YouTube description. You can click on that link and you can find him and all that. But go ahead, please.
Yeah, hello. Even if you wildly, viciously, aggressively disagree with me, my name is Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints 40K. I break down the wonderful world of Warhammer. I also run Counterpoints, which is a politics channel. Right now, 5 days a week, I'm streaming on the Valor Media Network. If you type that into your search bar, you'll be able to find it pretty easily. Go ahead and subscribe. You'll be able to find my live streams. There, we're going to be breaking down all of the content. We're going to be talking smack about Noah Samson, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, every Tim Pool, every nefarious, malevolent, manipulative, dirtbag political pundit that is making our culture worse. I will be reviewing their content and talking smack about them 5 to 7 hours a day, Monday through Friday. So if that interests you as far as content does, I will be live between approximately 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So I do hope that you come join us. I do hope you check out the Valor Media Network. And thank you for having me on.
No, thanks for being here. Gang, check him out. He's a good guy, even though he's silly and wrong on this. I'll talk to you later, buddy. Have a good dinner, okay?
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Look, at the end of the day, it's real simple. If we want to live in a free country, that means we uphold the rights, the freedoms of everyone in this country. I do not think it is unreasonable to extend the First Amendment protections to an immigrant, especially one who is a legal permanent resident, especially one who, again, isn't actually accused of saying any of the shit that Connor said that would get him kicked out. He was merely associated with an organization who he claims says this stuff. It's weak. It doesn't pass the smell test. At the end of the day, if you want to be free, you have to protect the freedoms of the worst in your society, because that will be where any freedom is challenged first. If you want to be a protector of civil rights, you have to protect scoundrels, because that's who the state will go after first. I do not trust the government. I do not trust the government to uphold these standards. I do not trust the government to not make mistakes. I do not trust any of this. We have to have due process. And look, we cannot save our republic by burning it down. We cannot save freedom of speech by stripping it from people. We cannot do that. And I refuse to allow that to happen. Look, at the end of the day, I really do believe that this is going to go to the Supreme Court. And I do believe the Supreme Court is going to see it my way. I think the legal backing is firmly in the favor of the First Amendment. We have Supreme Court case law, right? Going back to 1945, brothers and sisters, 1969, right? 2011, all court cases that rule in favor of immigrants having the right to First Amendment protections, right? And the right to due process, all these things. Like, it's clear. It's clear. You have to twist yourself in pretzels to deny this on a legal ground. Okay, when it comes to the moral ground, we can have that conversation. I think we had a good conversation between me and Counterpoints here. Represented our sides on this, but like on the legal ground, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I know a lot of lawyers, and I've read a lot of amicus briefs, and I've read a lot of decisions. Okay, it's just pretty cut and dry. You can't have a law that violates the First Amendment. It will get struck down. And to the extent that any immigration law is violating the First Amendment, it will be struck down. Well, the law says that we can take your guns. Sure, until the Supreme Court takes a look at that law and strikes it down. This is simple stuff. We live in a constitution. We live in a republic. So yeah. Let me read some of these super chats. Thank you for the super chats, by the way. $5 from Joe the Mig says he claimed to be the president of the group and aided efforts to disrupt campus activities. So, as far as I read, he claimed to have been a negotiator for the group. I haven't seen, and maybe you can link me, where he says he was the president. I don't think he was the president. But let me ask you this. Do we charge a group's lawyer for representing the criminal that they represent, for negotiating on their behalf? Do we view that as bad? We shouldn't. Simply negotiating on a group's behalf does not make you culpable for the group's activities. Why would it? You're negotiating for them. You're not, as far as and again, correct me if I'm wrong. Show me evidence if I'm wrong. I haven't seen it where he planned all this shit. He's denying he did. And I've seen no evidence saying he did. I've seen a lot of people accusing him of it, but I haven't seen evidence. $5 from Cameraman 502. Quote, dissent is the highest form of patriotism. Treason is the highest form of dissent. Therefore, treason is the highest form of patriotism. This is a false dichotomy. Treason is not dissent. They are not the same. Let's not equate those things. Dissent is American. Treason is un-American. Treason is fundamentally different than dissent. So let me give you an example. I can say, I think America is bad, and I think they should lose against Russia. Even though we're not going to fight Russia, we're probably going to be joining them soon. That's dissent. That's not treason. What treason would be is saying, I want America to lose, so I'm going to send secrets to the Russian government. Top secret classified information to the Russian government. That would be treason, not dissent. You see the difference? I believe in you, gang. I know you're not total retards. I know that you can tell the difference between these two things. No, we can't, Cameraman. Cameraman 502 says, being a member of the organization and a leader, we'd apply the principle silence gives consent. No, we don't have to have a tweet or a social media post saying, I condemn what the people are doing right now. Again, because for several reasons. We don't know to what extent he was aware ahead of time or during the activities of these protests. He doesn't have to, and nowhere in immigration law that exists that I can see does he have to, or is he required to condemn bad actions. Simply silence gives consent is a silly, silly standard that I entirely disagree with. Blizza81 says, real reason, the RAL reason? I'm assuming this is real. The real reason is because he misrepresented his beliefs and his affiliations on his paperwork, done and dusted. Prove it. Prove it. Prove where he lied on his forms. Do you have access to his forms? Have you seen them? Was the lie willful? Because remember, you don't have to just prove that he got his forms wrong. You have to prove that he willfully withheld or falsified information. Different standards. And again, this is just stuff people are making up. They're literally making it up. I have seen no evidence to this. Annabo says, thanks for supporting my right to speech, Whick. Kind of crazy I have to be careful to toe the current party line or risk just being yeeted from my property. That's the insidious nature of this, right? Could you imagine the Trump administration or the Biden administration saying, we view anyone who disagrees with our Ukrainian and Russian policy, if you speak out in favor of Russia, we're going to deport you. That'd be insane. We can't have a situation where we tell people who come to our country, yes, this is the land of the free, but not you. You have to watch your fucking mouth. Because if you disagree with our foreign policy, we're going to deport you. You can't do that. You can't tell people that. It does not make us more free. It does not make us more safe. It makes us more totalitarian. It makes it more what it's going to do, what this all does, it has a chilling effect on the free speech, because there are things that America has done and there are things that America will do that absolutely everyone should speak out against. You and I as citizens and immigrants who are here should also speak out against it. One of those things that's happening right now is they're snatching people off the street, not giving them a trial, not giving them an access to a lawyer, not giving them even a fucking phone call, throwing them in the van, driving them to the airport, putting them on a plane, and sending them to a foreign prison. Every single man, woman, and child in the United States, whether it be free person, whether it be felon, whether it be immigrant, whether it be student visa holder, whether it be citizen, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, whatever, everyone should be crying out against this and speaking out against this. It is fundamentally un-American. It is dangerous to our way of life, and it is tearing at the fabric of a very core foundational principle of law and justice, which is innocent until proven guilty. And if you think they'll stop at immigrants, you're wrong. They're already going after law firms who represent cases that go against the administration. They are going after them legally, right? With legislation, lawfare, and all that, trying to shut them down. It's scary. And you should be scared. Console says they don't care, Whick. I'm learning that. I'm learning that. Doobie says, Whick, they're already talking about going after naturalized citizens. Yes, they want to revoke the birthright citizenship. They want to revoke naturalization for their enemies. Lesson Cell says, do you think that by leaving people who don't appreciate our way of life and way of thinking might poison people inside and eventually be a threat to our ways? I think that the bigger threat is, as I stated, lessening the free speech for immigrants is going to lessen our free speech rights. It's the thin end of the wedge, right? And I'm not saying it's a slope. It's not something we will slide down. I'm saying that there are forces at play that are intentionally shoving this in and trying to get this through so that they can widen it and start to go after, for example, Ann Seltzer, who did a poll that Trump didn't like, is now being sued by the Trump administration, by the government, because she put out a poll that Trump did not like. Is Trump going to win that case? Almost assuredly not. But that kind of harassment from the government is crazy. It's crazy. So, while yes, it's a risk. Free speech is a risk. The bigger risk and the bigger threat is censorship. Especially this type of censorship. And look, Doobie can attest. Me and him have gone the rounds. I do not agree with a lot of the pro-Hamas protesters. I do not agree with a lot of the college protesters. I do not agree with them at all. I think what they're saying is totally wrong. But they get to be wrong. They get to be wrong in America. You get to be wrong. You get to be wrong without risking your fucking student visa being revoked. You get to be wrong, especially a college kid, okay? College kids are always wrong. Not always, right? You know, but college kids are notoriously stupid. Very, very dumb. You get to be dumb in this country without risk of the government coming in, snatching you from your home, and throwing you back to your country of origin, right? You get to do that. $20 from Alexander Wrin. The Sedition Act has already, quote, marked the citizen as its prey, unquote. Jefferson warned, and now a friendless alien had been selected as the safest subject of a first experiment of despotism. Thank you for the $20. It's one of those things. One of the risks here, and look, you guys are gonna think I'm soy, but you can think I'm soy. One of the things I'm scared of. It's not the main thing I'm scared of, right? Because it's a future thing. It may not happen, etc. But one of the things I'm scared of is that when Democrats get back into power, that they're going to engage in revenge for all of this. And they're going to take all the tools that the current administration is fashioning to punish their political enemies, and they're going to just use it against Republicans wide scale, to teach them a lesson. That's what Trump's doing now, by the way, right? Trump's actively doing it. That's why I'm pushing it back against him hard. But to maybe help my MAGA brothers and sisters who still watch me understand why I'm pushing back hard against this is because I think it threatens you. Trump's actions put you, brothers and sisters, at risk. But I'm a citizen, you may say. But I support Trump, you may say. Again, Trump's not going to be in power forever. And any law that you fashion to go after these immigrants are going to be turned on you. Again, they're already MTP. They're already talking about doing it. They're already talking about doing it. They've already done it in the case of some law firms that have opposed Trump, and they're already doing it against Ann Seltzer, again, the poll person, who, again, for merely putting out a poll that Trump didn't like, is under legal threat in legislation. Oh, well, we are talking tomorrow. Lesson Cell, that's true. We are talking about tomorrow's subject. For those of you who want to know, we're going to have Big Papa Buckaroo on. We're going to have Admiral Gibbs. We're going to have New York Shade. And we're going to have Shenandoah. And we're going to be talking about Trump's statements about how he wants to run for or he's thinking of running for a third term. And he believes he can. The 22nd and the 12th Amendment say no, but he thinks he can get away with it. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. It should be fun. Man, oh man, oh man. We got some big announcements coming up, but I can't make them yet. They're not quite finalized, but it should be fun when we get those things finalized. But God, we're not going to stay on too long tonight. But I just want to say how just thankful I am have you, my dear audience. Even the people here who disagree with me, even the people here who think I'm stupid and dumb, okay? I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming by. I appreciate you spending your time with me. I appreciate you at least listening to my point of view, right? Even if you don't agree. I do appreciate that, so thank you. I might call you stupid and dumb if you're being stupid and dumb still, but that doesn't mean I don't love you, dear Wickers, okay? That doesn't mean I'm not fond of you. I just think that sometimes you're stupid and dumb. If you've enjoyed this show, if you've liked this content, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I hope that you enjoyed the debate between me and Connor. I know it wasn't super blood sportsy. We didn't crash out and start dropping F slurs. So maybe it isn't going to get as much traction, right? Which is always funny to me that if I want my show to do very well, it has to go very poorly. And that blows my mind that that's the case. I know when I lose control of a panel, for example, and it goes sideways and there's yelling and there's screaming and there's crash outs and things like that, I know I'm going to get like triple the views that I normally do. I'm not going to call any of you slurs. I don't really. Look, retard's not a slur, first of all. Okay. But I don't know. I just don't like using foul language that much. Frostback says he's being asked to and told there's a way. Come on, it's not his idea. He has no idea if it's possible. Well, whoever's advising him or whoever's telling him this, that's not good. Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. Tune in. Once again, we're going to be talking about the Trump third term statements. Get your super chats in now before the dollar entirely loses all value and the stocks continue to crash and the tariffs are levied and we all starve. Okay, great. I love you. Bye-bye. Bye.